I don't know what it is about today's filming, but I'm trying to find like a place to stand today without getting glare on my glasses, so I do apologize if you see a bunch of glare. I'm trying to do the best I can. But here we go with my March wrap up. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Yes, today is my March wrap up, and it feels so weird to be saying March wrap up because honestly it felt like last month was February. It's gone by so fast, which is good in a way because spring, there's like no snow outside. It is so exciting. So this month I read a total of 5 books. One was a nonfiction theology book and the rest were all regular fiction books. So without further ado, here they are. First book I finished this month was Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Now, most of the time with works by C.S. Lewis, because he has such rich writing, and it's very hard for me to focus, especially with his theology work, not so much his Chronicles of Narnia, I find really hard to pay attention and to keep attention so I can actually catch a lot of the things that he's talking about. So I audiobooked, listened to this while I was reading it. So I kind of had it read to me and followed along. That way I could really pick up on things, and I picked up on a few things that really stood out to me. The first half of this book is quite fascinating. I found it really interesting. The second half of this book was really dry and just dragged on forever. So honestly, I gave it a 4-star rating just because I really do like the way C.S. Lewis writes and the way he explains things. And he did write it so that lay people could understand, not just so much theological minds could understand. Even though I just said I have trouble focusing and paying attention, I still find that he has a really good way of explaining things to people. And I really enjoyed the Screwtape Letters, and just it was almost a controversial idea of having a head demon writing to a novice demon about tempting and just the flip side of things of our Father below, and kind of looking at it from the other side of the other camp. And I found that really interesting. It was just a really creative way to think about things that you might not have normally thought about unless you saw it from a different perspective. The next book was my first reread of this month, and that was Entwined by Heather Dixon. I bought this book, and you saw that in my book haul, and then when I mentioned in my rereads video, when I buy a book and I actually own my copy, I like to reread that copy so it's not considered an unread book on my shelf. So I read Entwined, I gave it a reread. I still really like the relationship between the sisters and Azalea's drivenness to protect everybody and to take care of everybody, and that kind of runs her almost to the ground of just taking care of everybody. It was just a really good family dynamic and sister dynamic. The love interests were just so nicely sprinkled in there. There's a couple of them, and the way some of those relationships played out with the older girls were just really sweet and really well done. And I liked all of the men for their own different characteristics, and some of them were flawed in different ways. I just really liked the male characters and the love interests in this story. The other thing I really liked is that the magic is almost like a Beauty and the Beast type magic, where certain things were magical and alive, but at the same time the magic was seen as a very negative thing, how it was the past High King that wanted to control things, and he kind of magicked certain items, but there was ways of combating that, and they did it all together, and it wasn't magic against magic. It was love and friendship and promises and family that kind of fought against that magic. So I really liked the way the magic system worked in this book, and it was just a really great reread. It is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. I don't think I've mentioned that. So of course it's a retelling, and I adore retellings. Again, I kept it at its 4-star rating because I just really enjoyed a lot of the elements with it. The next book I read was Beauty and the Beast Lost in a Book by Jennifer Donnelly. Now, I mentioned in my book haul that this seems like just a promo book. It doesn't have a purpose of being written. It's just promoting the new live action. Well, I finally have seen the new live action movie, and though there were things I wasn't a huge fan of, there were many things I did like. But now I like the story a bit more because I can see how it can tie in to how they did the storytelling in the live action film. And it added to my experience of the storyline of the live action movie, because I felt like the live action movie storyline was really rushed through, and a lot of the elements to draw you into the characters were just kind of thrown in there and rushed through. So this story kind of adds to more of that connection with the characters and the storyline dragging on. At least I felt for myself, so I liked that addition to it. I realize I'm really bad at giving synopsis when I do my wrap-up, so I'm gonna try. In this book, it's right after the Beast shows Belle his library, and she spends a lot of time in there cleaning it up, getting to know Lumiere and Cogsworth and Chip and everybody, and she discovers a book that is left there called Nevermore, and it is a magical book where she can actually enter into that world, and it is the chance to have everything she wants, the freedom, the more than this provincial life, and her freedom from the Beast Castle, and it just offers, but there's so much more to it than meets the eye, and she meets somebody she might not have expected to meet. And it's different because there's almost like a background story to the Beauty and the Beast story going on in the background, which I really liked. Because it was a novelization version of some characters, it was actually hard to picture both the animated Belle character or the Emma Watson Belle character. It almost felt like separate characters within that world. So I don't know, with novelizations of characters from movies, it just feels very strange to actually put those characters that you're seeing into this world. But after seeing the movie, I kind of see it a bit more, so I guess it could work. The other thing about this book is I read it in one sitting pretty much because the chapters are stinking short. The chapters, sometimes, I think the longest chapter was like 4 or 5 pages. And there's like a 2-page chapter. Like with short chapter books, I fly through them. I don't know what it is. So I flew through this book, really enjoyed it, gave it a 4-star rating. The next book for me was another reread, and that was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I decided I wanted to do some rereading, and I did a whole video on that, so you guys can check that out. I'll leave it linked somewhere for you to check that out. So I reread Cinder. It was so fun to be back in here. I wanted to catch more information this time because I felt like I was so excited by the series when I first read it that I kind of flew through it and missed some information. So I'm wanting to reread this series, A, because I really liked it and I wanted to get back into the Marissa Meyer's writing, and B, because I missed some information that I want to pick up on. I kept it at its 5-star rating. It was just as good as the first time I read it. I really like these characters and the storytelling. So yeah, definitely kept it at a 5-star rating. The next book I read was our Coffee&Chapters and Christian YA book club pick for March. I got this as a birthday present from my friend Bree. I was so excited to get this, and she pre-ordered it for me. It was one of my most anticipated reads for this year, but I liked this a lot better than the second book. So some things that were problematic in the second book fixed itself a bit in this book. So I liked this. We're going to talk much more about this on our live show, which is April 3rd, for anyone wondering. So April 3rd, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is our live show. So come and join us here. Melanie will be joining us this time, so I'm not by myself rambling. So you guys can watch us talk about For Love and Honor. This follows Lady Sabine, who is hiding a blemish or a birthmark that could condemn her as a witch in that time period. And this also follows Sir Bennet from the first book, who is struggling with his family's finances as his older brother has squandered most of the family's wealth and they are being threatened to pay back those debts. He needs to make an advantageous marriage for money, and she needs to make a marriage for protection. I enjoyed the banter in this book. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed their conversation and their friendship and the development of that relationship. If you don't like violence, gruesomeness, or threats of witch trials, I mean, it didn't go into any witchcraft or anything. It just went into that typical historical witch testing trials that they would have done during like the Reformation or any of that time period. So it's very historically done. But if you don't like reading about that type of violence, this might not be the book for you. But I still gave it a 3.5 stars just because some things did bother me, but a lot of things kind of made up for that, if that makes sense. But stay tuned for our live show April 3rd to hear Melanie and I discuss it more in depth. So those are all the books I read in March. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have, of course, read any of these books or what your favorite book for March was. I love talking about the books that we've read. I've had some good conversations with you guys, so let's keep that up in the comments below. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.